So back in 1967, I spent that year in the Army and in Southeast Asia. Near the end of my tour in Vietnam, I was entitled to an R&R trip, that's rest and recreation, so I took a 3-hour flight to Thailand. And these here are my slides of that trip. Well, here it is 50 years later, and no one is going to look at slides. So I figured the best thing I could do is to save these things was to put them on this DVD. Bangkok, officially known as Krung Thep today, is the capital and most populous city of Siam, which is now called Thailand. The city occupies 605 square miles in the Chao Phraya River Delta. Bangkok dates from at least back into the early 15th century, when it was a village on the west bank of the Chao Phraya River. It became the capital of Siam in 1782, and its strategic location near the mouth of the river gave it increased importance. Bangkok initially served as a customs outpost with Siamese forts on both sides of the river. When putting together this slideshow, I wanted to identify all the places in Bangkok that I visited, the temples, the palaces, and the floating markets, and I was hoping to give them names. Well, in December of 1967, when I was there, it still seemed to me to be a colonial city with few buildings taller than a few stories. Well, it's much different now, and it's a very big tourist attraction, that due to its pivotal role as a U.S. military R&R destination, which is how I managed to visit the city. It was a welcome break for us servicemen, a mere 3 hours away from the Vietnam War. When the U.S. pulled out of Vietnam in 1973, Japanese businessmen took over as leaders in investment, and the expansion just exploded. Bangkok today is no longer the sleepy colonial town I visited 50 years ago. As you can tell from these pictures, these current pictures I found online, the place is a mega city. When putting together this slideshow, I wanted to identify all the places I visited. You know, the temples, the palaces, and the floating markets, but I couldn't do it. Metropolitan Bangkok has, 50 years later, become a massive mega city of development. The charming old colonial city, well, that's long gone. Looking back on my old photographs, I can't help thinking to myself, I really much preferred the old city. Well, I was about to enter one of the side entrances to the original old royal palace area, and I came upon this group of soldiers, evidently about to perform some colonial-oriented ceremony. I don't know. I signed up for a tourist ferry that would take me across the big river to the old floating marketplace. That was going to be nice. I was hoping to give it a name, but I couldn't find it listed on a map of today. The floating markets are a unique attraction to Bangkok, not just for food, but even for precious stones. I found a map but the charming old colonial city I knew is gone. For example, I found out there are at least 10 floating markets in the area, and I have no idea what the one I toured was called. I had taken a tourist ferry across the river to it, but that's all I know. The same goes for all the location of the many Buddhist statues, the palace grounds, and the many Buddhist temples I visited in the city. All now seem to be hidden by skyscrapers. No matter. The slideshow is still a welcome trip back in time. My floating market river tour also took me to this huge open barn where in 1967 the ceremonial royal river barges of the old Siamese kings were housed as a tourist attraction, used by royalty as symbols of power, I guess, during elaborate special uh, river feast days, I assume, but they certainly made a strong impression on me. After that, I remember climbing up stone steps to one of these old temples. I don't know which one this is, I just don't remember. And I stubbed my shins on them when getting off the boat. Uh, these are very steep steps. Needless to say, Buddha is everywhere and in many different sizes and shapes and forms, made of carved stones and using colored tiles, watching over, protecting, and advising the people as he sits there, often in gold. I saw many school children and young Buddhist monks in training getting a religious education here at the temples. One temple in particular houses this huge reclining Buddha made of stone. And this reclining Buddha, who is resting on his side, has on the soles of his feet evidently some wise comments about life and how you should conduct yourself. Well, this is the Hotel Intercontinental, the Intercontinental Hotel, I think it was called. And I heard they had a very nice buffet there, so I went there for lunch. And then after that, there was a display of traditional Thai dancing and activities out on the garden behind the building. So I stayed for that. Now, of course, you can't leave Bangkok without mentioning the fact that the nightlife here is also very outstanding. And it was also Christmas times, so the place was pretty well lit up. However, I was too soon back on an airplane going back to Cameron Bay.